People keep saying you can't find graphics cards anywhere, yet I just strolled into Best Buy and walked out with a brand new RX 9070 XT. Hey guys, CJ with Elevated Systems, and yes, I actually bought this entire $2,100 iBuyPower Y40 Pro pre-built gaming PC just to get my hands on the graphics card inside. There's a bit of a backstory here. Like a lot of people trying to score an RX 9070 XT, I missed out on launch day. My local-ish Micro Center actually had them in stock, even the MSRP models, well into the afternoon, but I had, well, adult responsibilities that day and couldn't make the hour-long drive to stand in line to snag one. Since then, I've been checking online retailers pretty regularly, only to see the 9070 XT sold out everywhere for weeks. But something interesting started happening. On sites like Newegg and Best Buy, the first search results weren't individual GPUs, they were pre-built systems featuring the 9070 XT, and those were starting to sell out too. And that got me thinking, are people actually buying full gaming PCs just to get a specific graphics card? I mean, not like that's a new thing, but I did a little research. After running some quick back of the napkin math, at least for the systems listed on Newegg, the answer was absolutely not worth it. Most of those builds had a markup of $500 or $600 or more, but then I found this one. On paper, the Y40 Pro from iBuyPower actually looks like a fair deal. Of course, specs listed online could be pretty vague, so I wouldn't know for sure until it showed up. So today, we're checking it out. We'll go over the components they used and see if the build makes sense. We'll look at build quality, see if the system's been tuned at all, and test its performance in gaming, thermals, and noise. And ultimately, we'll answer the big question. If you're after a hard-to-find component or specific set of components, is picking up a pre-built like this actually a smart move? Let's get into it. Now, I ordered this PC from Best Buy and chose to have it shipped to me because the delivery date was several days sooner than in-store pickup, but that meant rolling the dice with UPS, and what Brown did for me was apparently drop my $2,000 computer right on its top corner. I mean, the damage wasn't catastrophic, but still, it's not ideal. iBuyPower should really double box these expensive systems in a plain outer box. Not only would that offer better protection, but it's also a basic security measure. Sure, this packaging is fine for retail shelf, but there's no need to advertise the contents across the entire shipping route. Sliding off the outer box, the system was padded with open cell foam. The PC was fully assembled and the internal components were secured with an expanding foam bag. The GPU was braced and strapped in place, which is good. However, the panels on the Height Y40 case are toolless and attached with simple ball stud fasteners, and the panels weren't secured for shipping thanks to UPS's not so gentle handling. One of the plastic fastener clips on the tempered glass panel broke. I could actually hear a piece rattling around inside the frame, and unlike the retail Height Y40, this version doesn't come with any of the spare clips. So now my glass panel is only held in place by a single top fastener. Other than that, everything else looked fine. The riser cable, graphics card, CPU cooler block, and RAM were all firmly seated. All visible cables appeared to be plugged in properly, although during testing, I discovered the front panel USB 3.2 Type A ports weren't working. Later during teardown, I found the internal header cable had been completely disconnected. Now, I actually did all the performance, thermals, and noise testing first, but let's go over the specs. This system comes with iBuyPower's $90 wired keyboard and mouse set. The membrane keyboard is, well, pretty bad in my opinion, but that's subjective. The mouse is okay. It has adjustable DPI and thumb buttons. Probably great if you're buying this pre-built for a younger user, but more experienced gamers will definitely replace this. For cooling, iBuyPower used one of their own branded 360mm AIOs, which they sell for about $100. I pulled the block to check the thermal interface. It was clean, well applied, and even. Underneath that is the $479 Ryzen 7 9800 X3D, which at the time of purchase was still the best gaming-focused CPU available in a pre-built. No signs of the 9900 X3D or 9950 X3D systems yet. For storage, we've got a 2TB WD Green SN3000 NVMe SSD. Not bad at $119, but with QLC NAND and no DRAM cache, it's not something I'd pick for a gaming PC. Memory is where things start to go sideways. The system includes an $89 32GB kit of Giel Orion 5 DDR5 running at 5200 megatransfers per second. That's below the Zen 5 sweet spot of 6000 and even below the CPU's max officially supported 5600 MTS. This is probably the most egregious decision in the build. It can reduce gaming performance by 5 to 10%. But hey, there's RGB, so that should make up the difference, right? The next weak point is the $100 MSI Pro B650 VC Wi-Fi motherboard. Some of MSI's Pro Series boards offer really decent value. This isn't one of them. It lacks VRM heat sinks entirely despite dual 8-pin EPS power connectors. That is likely why MSI already replaced it with the VC Wi-Fi 2, which has better power delivery and a VRM heatsink. Also, this board doesn't support PCIe 5, even though the system comes with a PCIe 5 graphics card. Sure, the RX 9070 XT doesn't fully saturate PCIe 4 in most games, but for content creation or AI workloads, that bandwidth gap could matter. And in a couple of years, when it's time to upgrade, PCIe 5 GPUs will likely be bottlenecked on PCIe 4 boards. Not that it matters here, because even if they used a PCIe 5 motherboard, the $130 height Y40 only comes with a PCIe 4 riser cable, and vertical mounting is your only option. You can check out my full review of the case for all my thoughts on it. Powering it all is a $90 high-power Super Gold 850-watt ATX 3.0 PSU. It's 80 plus gold rated, non-modular, and exceeds both XFX 800-watt recommendation for the 9070 XT and the system's 525-watt max power draw. High Power is a Taiwanese OEM, and this PSU rates B+ on the tier list. And now, the star of the show, the graphics card. Just like the other components, I didn't know which model I'd get until the PC arrived, but I expected an MSRP card, and that's what I got. It came with the FXS Swift, the 1600 megahertz base clock, 2970 megahertz boost, 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 on a 256-bit bus. On launch day, and only on launch day, it retailed for $599. Now, before we tally everything up and see if I got ripped off, a quick build overview. The Y40 usually ships with one rear exhaust fan. IBuyPower relocated that to the bottom of the case under the shroud and added 3 of their own RGB fans. They have a proprietary 6-pin connector and connect to a hub. It's maybe a $20 value. Cable management is fine. Excess cables are all tied up behind the motherboard tray or under the PSU shroud, and none interfere with the fans or airflow. However, IBuyPower did something weird with the AIO fans. They plugged each fan into a separate header. CPU, System Fan 1, and System Fan 2. I mean, they couldn't even spend $3 on a fan splitter, and that'll come back to haunt us in the BIOS section. Other than that, and the disconnected USB cable, the system was assembled well. No RAM in the wrong slots or missing thermal paste. So what about value? Well, if we use that $599 launch price for the XFX Swift, the total component cost is $1,816. That means I paid a $334 premium, which sounds bad, but that $599 MSRP doesn't really exist anymore. Board partners and retailers have said it was a one-time launch price and not sustainable. On the day I received this PC, the same card was in stock at the Denver Micro Center for $830. So, well, that's the price. That brings the build total to $2,047, and I paid about $100 for the build fee and warranty, and that's extremely fair. Most builders use a flat fee between $100 and $300, so overall, not a bad deal. If you throw in a retail Windows license, it's actually below market value. Now, let's quickly go over the UEFI and initial system setup. At the time of purchase, the BIOS was up to date, even though a newer version has been since released. Unfortunately, IBuyPower made some significant mistakes here. The most serious, the system was configured to use CSM mode instead of UEFI. That disables secure boot and fast boot, but most importantly, it disables resizable bar. So with no rebar, no PCI 5, and slow memory, they've basically erased most of the performance gains that 3D V cache provides. They also enabled the XMP memory profile instead of Expo. Now, the GEAL memory kit does support both XMP and Expo, and in this case, the profiles are probably identical, but still, it's an AMD system and it should be running Expo. And on top of that, they didn't do any fan tuning. 2 of the 3 PWM AIO fans were plugged into headers set to fixed DC voltage, spinning consistently at over 1500 RPM. The bottom height fan, also PWM, was set the same way, running nearly 2000 RPM. As a result, the system was unnecessarily loud at idle, which we'll get to in the thermal section. I originally planned to leave everything as is for testing, but decided to correct the major UEFI missteps. I switched the system to the proper UEFI mode, enabled resizable bar, and confirmed PBO was turned on, and selected the Expo memory profile. After saving the changes, I booted into a standard Windows 11 setup. No surprises there. Once setup was complete, the only extra software installed was MSI Center and a shortcut to the IBuyPower support page. Other than that, and well, Windows itself, it was a clean, bloatware-free install, which is always nice to see. The system shipped with Windows version 23H2, but updated to 24H2 via Windows Update. With drivers fully patched and updated, I installed my testing suite and got to benchmarking. For initial testing, I left everything at stock aside from those UEFI fixes and bumped the GPU power limit up by 10%. That's basically free performance with no extra stability testing needed. Starting with CPU performance in Cinebench 2024, the 9800 X3D scored 132 single core and 1324 multi-core, slightly under the average of 135 and 1400. Same in Cinebench 2023 with 2090 single and 22773 multi, again, just below average. Switching to synthetic gaming tests, my best Steel Nomad run was 7045, about 4% under the average. Port Royal scored 18264, and Time Spy Extreme did best at 12704, just 1.5% below average. I likely could close that gap with faster memory, but without spending any more money, I tried a little tuning. I undervolted the CPU by 30 microvolts and the GPU by 60 and bumped the VRAM up by 100 megahertz with fast timings. That gave a 3% boost in Steel Nomad and a 2.5% boost in Time Spy. For game testing, I reset everything to stock, keeping that 10% GPU power bump, and tested 10 games at 1440p with max graphics settings. No major surprises. This is what I'd expect from this hardware. Baldur's Gate 3 did stand out. 1% lows were lower than usual for the area I test, but that was consistent across 3 runs, so I'll just call it an outlier. Overall performance is solid for 1440p gaming. The pairing may be a bit lopsided though. At this resolution, the RX 9070 XT will be the limiting factor in most games, meaning the 9800 X3D's performance can go untapped. In my last video, I tested the same GPU with a last gen 7900 X3D, and in overlapping titles, there wasn't much difference, even in CPU heavy games like Starfield or Space Marine 2. If I were building this from scratch, I'd probably save about $150 and go with the Ryzen 7 9700X. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any good pre-built systems with that combo. They were either way overpriced or out of stock. On the plus side, the 9800 X3D does offer some future-proofing. Unfortunately, the board and RAM choices make that less ideal. Also, if you're curious how this pre-built handles Linux gaming, I'll be doing a full Linux-focused review over on my Linux channel, so stay tuned for that. Before wrapping up, let's talk about one of the big problems with this system: noise. Although thermals was solid even before undervolting, during a 30-minute gameplay session, the CPU temps peaked at just 68.5 C or 48 degrees above ambient, while the GPU temps maxed at 62 degrees Celsius or 41.5 Delta. Undervolting gave me the same temps, but with a roughly 200 megahertz higher game clock, even boosting to 3250 megahertz in-game. Stress testing with Cinebench and Port Royal running simultaneously, the CPU reached a max of 91 degrees Celsius with zero thermal throttling. I'll also point out that despite my criticism of the motherboard's lack of heat sinks, because the MOSFETs are surrounded by the AIO and rear exhaust fan, continually pulling air across them, under stress, the VRM temps didn't exceed 62 Celsius or 42 C above ambient. So thermally, iBuyPower gets a thumbs up. Though let's be honest, they kind of lucked into that. They didn't tune the fans at all. At full load, it's loud. I mean, normal for a gaming PC. But at idle, the fans were still spinning fast enough to push 50 decibels. That's way louder than it needs to be. So I added a $3 fan splitter to connect all the AIO fans to the single CPU header and then tune the fan curves in BIOS. I set proper ramp timings and dropped the idle speeds to 20%. That made the system basically silent at idle. So overall, is the iBuyPower Y40 Pro a good option if you're trying to get your hands on an RX 9070 XT gaming system? Well, as with most things, it depends. If you're looking to buy an entirely new gaming PC and don't want to deal with scalpers, then technically, yes, this system represents a fair retail price. Whether you agree with the retail cost of the individual components is fair and is a completely different conversation, but those are the current prices, and $2,050 is what it would cost to scratch build this PC today. Fair doesn't necessarily mean great value though. If you want a complete new upper mid-tier PC today and this meets your budget, then it's solid. Performance is slightly below average, but not enough that most people will actually notice. If you're thinking about buying this, pulling the graphics card to upgrade your existing PC, and then flipping the pre-built with your old card, well, that might work, but your old GPU would already need to be pretty solid to justify pairing it with a 9800 X3D. Bottom line, I wouldn't have built the system this way, but it was the only way I could get a 9070 XT system at the time, and I didn't get ripped off, so I'm happy with the purchase. That said, a lot can change in just a couple of weeks, and the landscape has already started to shift. Individual 97 XTs still aren't widely available, but as of this morning, neither is this exact PC. However, more pre-builts have started popping up at places like Micro Center and Newegg, and some of them, like this one, look like fair deals on paper, and a few actually include like proper motherboards and the right faster memory. We're also starting to see the return of the infamous combo deals. They're not sticking around long, but they're lasting more than an hour. Right before filming, I saw a Gigabyte RX 9070 XT bundled with a B580 motherboard, still in stock, so the options are improving. But what do you think? Are pre-builds or GPU combos a fair way to get these cards, or just a clever way to drive up margins on a popular, scarce product? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you made it this far, hit that like button. And if you want more content like this, deep dives on pre-built and hardware reviews, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.